everyone, welcome back to another episode of Advanced League Tips, a series where we break down each champion individually and look at their input buffering combos as well as animation cancels and item active combos that interact with their kit. Today we're going to be taking a look at a few things that is interesting with Kha'Zix, namely the Prowler's Claw invisibility combo that is very similar to Wukong. We're going to be looking at Gore and Stridebreaker interactions, as well as his EQ combo and how you can input buffer the animations over top of each other. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So as you can see here with Kha'Zix, I have his E and his Q evolved, so this gives the EQ combo better context. Now, essentially what we're looking at here is an input buffer that is interesting, and if you don't know that you can do this, this will actually increase the speed of your DPS with Kha'Zix. So the way animations and casting abilities typically work is before you can cast one, the other has to resolve. So if I WQ and then QW, you can see that both of those animations don't overlap, but rather one has to resolve before I cast the other. Now, the thing, keeping this rule in mind, the thing with Kha'Zix's EQ animation, or input buffer, I should say, is that during his leap, Kha'Zix can still cast his Q. So when I leap over this enemy dummy, you can see that in mid-air, I don't have to wait for Kha'Zix to land in order to cast Q. Now, the reason this is important, I'm not sure why that didn't work. The reason this is important is because when you are leaping over somebody, again, instead of having to wait for his E to land and then casting Q, and then you can't do the opposite, so QE, you can simply leap towards somebody, and while you are, you can get your Q off, and this will increase the speed of you getting your damage off. So, like I had said, you leap over, and in the middle of that leap, you have to put your mouse on the enemy, but you cast Q, and instead of waiting for Kha'Zix to land, you can get the damage off mid-air. This does also work with his unevolved E and Q, but because it's a shorter range, it's less likely that you're going to get it off as fast. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at, as I had mentioned, similar to Wukong, is Prowler's Claw and the invisibility on Kha'Zix's ultimate. Now, one thing I would like to note here is this is just for interaction's sake. Kha'Zix is still best with Duskblade because of the invisibility passive there, as well as the invisibility on his ultimate, which is really OP. Anyway, to give this context, Prowler's Claw is a targeted dash. That broken shield means they get a 10% damage boost from your champion. So, when Kha'Zix goes invisible, you can see that when I cast Prowler's Claw, he stays invisible. Now, with his other abilities, so Ultimate Q, Ultimate Auto, Ultimate W, and then Ultimate E, all of those abilities break stealth. However, with Prowler's Claw, this allows you to deal your damage, get the damage boost, and get into range of the target without having to break your stealth, which prevents you from getting targeted from other enemy champions. So this is great for gap closing and keeping your stealth. Again, this is just so you know that it works, but Duskblade, as of right now, 11.4, is still what you want to build on Kha'Zix. Now, similarly with his E, it's not the best interaction in the world, but you can still, just like the EQ, you can still cast this ability in the middle of his E. Now, his E only allows for one ability to be overlaid on top of it, so if I try to go E Prowler's Q, it actually won't allow for the Q to buffer, and I have to wait for Kha'Zix to land in order to input buffer the Q after the Prowler's Claw is resolved. So looking at that, I go E Prowler's Claw. I cast Q there, but it didn't input buffer. So when I go E Prowler's, I have to cast Q after the Prowler's Claw resolves. Now, just to give context with the other item actives, let's take a look at Gore. Now, keeping in mind the rule of Kha'Zix's E input, when Kha'Zix leaps over, he can cast Gore in the middle of that leap. However, he cannot go Gore and then Q. he has to wait for the E to land and resolve because we chose Gore Drinker as our input buffer over top. So if I go E Gore Drinker, he has to land. If I go maximum distance, as you can see, he lands and then has to walk back into the ring. So just something to keep in mind. And then similar with Stridebreaker, Stridebreaker actually has, similar to Kane, a very negative interaction. So when I cast Stridebreaker in the middle of my E, it actually cancels the damage from my E when it lands. So even though I get the slow and the damage from Stridebreaker off, this is a negative interaction because not only is it interrupting the animation, but it's also canceling the damage from the E. Okay, and just to give it context again with the input buffer, with EQ, I have to choose which animation or which ability that I'm going to use. So if I go E Stridebreaker into Q, I have to wait for the Stridebreaker to resolve in order for Q to go through. So there you have it, guys. Between his EQ combo mid-air with that input buffer, as well as Prowler's Claw invisibility, and the interaction with his E input on Gore Drinker and Stridebreaker, there are all the animations and tips that Kha'Zix has. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we will see each other again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.